On today's episode at tjsreef, we're going to show you how we made this roof. We get to do this again. Don't stop! I need to get myself better crew. Oh wait, I'm getting what I pay for. Are we ready? On today's episode of tjsreef, we're going to show you the value of 3D printing for your reef. Let's take a look. We're going to go through the process of making that top. And how did we do it? Well, we 3D printed it and assembled it. But not only can we make tops with 3D printers, we're going to talk about whether it's safe to use 3D printing and what else you need to think about when you're making items for your reef using a 3D printer. Hey there everyone, and welcome to another episode of tjsreef. Today we're talking about 3D printing. And you might be thinking, what does a 3D printer have to do with a reef tank? Well, it can actually save you a lot of money. You can make custom parts for your tank, and whatever your imagination. Lots of talking. We're just gonna. I need louder people. Is that all I gotta do to make it quiet around here? So with a 3D printer, you can make custom parts for your tank. You can make parts to save money, and it's fun. From my experience, most reefers are tinkerers too. So to be a 3D printer isn't exactly out of the range of possibilities for someone that's got a reef tank. I mean, obviously, there's me. So a couple of things about 3D printers and making stuff for your tank. First of all, stick only to ABS plastic. There's PLA and there's other things out there that you can use. From my experience and from what I've learned, ABS is the only plastic that is safe for your tank. Now, there's some question as to whether or not the colorants are safe for your tank. So generally your plastic is going to be white, but you may have noticed other colors like black and green and red. I can't say whether or not that's safe or not. So use any colorants with caution. If you're not sure, just stick with white. Outside of that, be careful of the chemicals you use. I wouldn't treat anything with acetone. It's very common for people to use acetone to smooth their 3D prints afterward. I would not. I would just sand it because acetone could be bad in a tank. Don't use any metallic 3D printing processes. We obviously don't want any metals in our tank. And other than that, you can pretty much 3D print anything. A couple of things I've printed is one, the tank top, the screen cover we're going to show today, and another one was a custom hang-on filter. They don't make a filter sock for my all-in-one, so I made a custom hanger. I ended up abandoning it. I did make it, and it did work, but it just wasn't doing what I expected it to do. So let's get into the process of how we are going to make a tank top. Well, what you're looking at here is the current top of the tank. It is made out of a aluminum frame that is used for window screening. It's a kit you can buy at your local hardware store, really simple. The reason I did this versus like some of the tank top kits out there is, I have to go around the legs of my lights, and it's just an odd shape with my tank. So I put this together. It works great, but I am concerned about the salt creep and metals getting into the tank, and this is just not a good combination. Water and metal, I don't like it. Now the screening is a plastic mesh. It is transparent, so it allows more light through. I think the holes are 1/4 inch on the netting, so nothing's really going to get out here. The first step is just measuring the heck out of your tank, and then going into a CAD program, which you can just do online like I did for this one, and start creating the top that you want using your dimensions. Now my printer isn't big enough. The print bed is not big enough to print the entire top. So I have to print it in sections. And once I have each section made and printed, I super glue it together. And from there, we just repeat the process till the entire frame is printed and assembled, and we verify the fit. And then we move on to strengthening it.
Because it's made of a number of different parts, each one of those joints that I glue together is a weak point. So what I want to do is use fiberglass and fiberglass resin to make it a little bit more sturdy. Now that, in combination with epoxy to the underside at the joints, along with the tension that the netting will be putting on the frame, should make it really nice and solid. So let's move into the fiberglassing process. Okay, we are now outside because you never want to do this inside. Here I have my frame. Just going to start on this front edge here. You're going to want a paper cup, your hardener, mixing stick, your scissors, strips of fiberglass, your resin, and the Coke Zero. That's for me. Don't forget your pirate skull. Rubber gloves too. Let me get the resin and the hardener mixed up. Do about an ounce at a time. It gives you about 10 minutes working time. So that's why we'll do small batches, do a strip at a time, and that way it doesn't harden up too fast on us. Well, if you haven't figured it out, this stuff is sticky. The second it touches your gloves, it starts screwing up your fiberglass, so you just got to deal with it. Once it hardens, you can sand it like wood, and it will come to a great finish. It's good to go. So here's this section. We'll wait for it to harden up, spin this thing around, and continue on with the rest of it. We'll see you when we come back from getting this completely fiberglassed and ready for sanding. All right, the resin has hardened up, so now we are going to do some sanding. Alright, so here it is, all sanded, and I just rinsed it off, which is why it's wet at the moment. You can see it's much smoother. I haven't painted it yet, that's why you got the different colors. It's definitely stiffened up. And next we'll be painting it, and then using the spline to set in the mesh for the top. Alright, first coat of paint is on. It is looking really good. Is it perfect? No. Could I spend another day or so really perfecting this? Absolutely. But, I want to get that aluminum top off that tank. I don't want any metal near my tank. And, at the end of the day, this is going to sit on top of the tank, not going to sit inside the lip. So it's all around a better choice. Okay, 2 items that I'm going to take care of now. First, I have some resin in the channel that you put the spline for the mesh top. I'm going to add a little bit of epoxy over these joints on the underside just to give it a little bit more rigidity. We'll see how it holds up, but we'll go from there. All right, managed to get most of the stuff out, so hopefully that's good enough for setting the spline. Now we're going to mix up some epoxy and hit all these joints. All right, we've got all the seams filled. I honestly don't know how much strength that's going to add, but you know what? It's not going to hurt. So better to seal those up than not. This stuff takes about 5. I think this is a 5-minute. Yep, 5-minute quick cure. So we'll give it about 10 or 15 just to be safe, and then we'll be ready to put the spline in and do the top and finish this bad boy up. Well, here is the original top, and I was hoping just to reuse the netting that's on it, but as you can see, they are not the same size. So, thankfully, I do have plenty of extra. The stuff's not cheap, but it's not terribly expensive. So I will just lay it over here, cut out a new pattern, and put in new mesh for the new top. The epoxy has hardened up, so we are good to go. I guess at least I'll keep an emergency spare tucked away in the supply closet if something should happen to this one. So let's get to putting the new top together. And here's the end result. We have a perfect custom-made 3D printed screen top for this tank. This turned out better than I expected. The top is really nice and tight. There's nothing getting out of here. The dimensions were great. And Brick, you may think he's really interested in the tank, but ultimately it's really because I have food. Is that good? What do you think? Brick approves. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of TJ's Reef. I hope you learned something about 3D printing, and maybe you'll have your own 3D printing projects for your tank. If you'd like more reefing tips, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We try to put out a show every week, give you something to do, especially during this lockdown that we're going through. And, it's a great way to see Brick. Right, Brick? Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you again on the next episode of TJ's Reef.